Alrighty, here we are in the second week of August. Cooler today than it's been. That's nice, right? I don't know. You hear me? I don't know if you're there.
All right, I'm in.
All right, good. Yeah, we're just saying it's a little bit cooler morning than it's been in a while. Second week of August here. Here in Atlanta, traffic is crazy. I'm sure you've noticed that this morning.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So, how are things so far this morning before we get into all these interesting news that we've got?
Had to have a doctor's appointment this morning just to check on wellness and vitality. So we all have to stay balanced in everything that we do, so that way we can continue on and keep working, keep doing what we love. So just a wellness check.
Yeah, well, I got a couple of different things to go over here. Something really interesting we'll get to later. That something you and I have talked a good bit about. So definitely be interesting to keep an eye on that. But first thing we're going to get into a little bit was some CBD regulations, or I guess we could really say lack thereof. Late last week, after we did the show on Wednesday, the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, Subcommittee on Healthcare and the Financial Service, held a hearing on the FDA's inaction on CBD regulations. Witnesses' statements and a link to the hearing are available. We'll get some information on that later. Everyone seems to agree that regulations are necessary for the industry, and I get that. But they're seeming to argue over these regulations, what is necessary for the industry. The consensus breakdown is whether the Food and Drug, the FDA, currently possesses the authority to write these regulations. Interesting enough, though, the Republicans usually, what we've seen, are the ones who are quite concerned about the executive agency's overreach. They are the ones saying the FDA has the power it needs, and the Democrats are saying that Congress has to act first on do this. So, before we get to a little bit more, what are your initial thoughts on that?
The federal government sets and establishes the standards. They set the regulatory agencies as well.
Right.
There is not a fight in the game when it comes to that. The
Yeah.
Fed is the Fed. They control the country itself, and things should be followed by the guidelines that are provided.
So, earlier, the FDA announced that they need new regulatory framework on it for the hemp and CBD. So, the translation basically give us the authority, give us more money, give us more staff, and only then we'll do the duties under the law. That's kind of where they're going at. So, Lisa McClain, representative in Michigan, we need reasonable regulation of the hemp and the hemp derived market to protect consumers, ensure the good acts in the hemp industry can grow their business. We can have a legitimate, flourishing market. The FDA realistically cannot regulate the entire world of hemp and its derivatives without additional research and authority. Now, on the backside of that, Jamie Ranskin out of Maryland. If first you don't succeed, try again in an effort to prepare the government for federal cannabis legalization. The bill would set up a commission to study how the federal legalization could be accomplished using states such as Colorado, not a surprise there, as the model. So where do you think they're heading with that, and what are their mindsets?
Mindset is spot on. From a consumable, um, anything that you consume or intake orally, I do feel that the FDA do have domain over it. They do need more research. They don't have all the research to answer the questions because they can't answer the questions now. So they need to do the research, allocate the monies and funds to do all the research, and then make all that research public, so that way that the public not only has a right to know, but they get the information that they need to improve opportunity.
So now something a little bit interesting over in South Dakota on this end. And they're saying if there's other states, maybe you could forgive the idea of just a crazy shot in the dark or the viewpoint of the story. But in South Dakota, unusual things that happen in the cannabis world, as we talked about, a longtime opponent of the legalization, Travis Ismay, has submitted a measure for the 2024 ballot. The initiative would repeal the legalization of medical in the state, forcing every dispensary to close and making any use at all of cannabis a crime. The state attorney has issued a summary of the ballot measure, and the public has until this Sunday to comment on it. Assuming the proposal advances, Ismay would need to collect 17,000 signatures to put the measure up for a vote.
That sounds reasonable. 17,000 is a very small number.
Well, it is a very small number, very true, as long as they know that they have until this Sunday to do such. But the thing is, they're taking a step back. He wants to completely make it where they're a non-cannabis state altogether, though.
What? Okay. That one right there is like, okay, stop, pump the brakes.
Because remember, we started off with saying he has submitted a measure for the 2024 ballot. His initiative would repeal the legalization of the state for medical, forcing every dispensary to close and any form of cannabis a crime in that state.
Obviously, the biasness it speaks in his choice of how he wants to handle the industry. He's totally biased.
Right. So that's the thing, is we're looking at what could really take a step back. And yes, 17,000 is not big, but I don't have those numbers in front of me. We've talked about it before with North Dakota. Remember, your main hubs in North Dakota, for example, your population is standardly the size of what just down the street Mercedes-Benz is on game day. So 17,000 throughout a sporadic state could be an issue getting together to get everybody to sign this if they are not full and forewarned about it.
I can say that the number is small to where for the ones that are uninformed, it's easy to attain that number. But then also on the flip side of that is because you have a number of people who do benefit from this plant, that they will be not only be totally opposed to it, they will campaign to the opposition of it and create enough awareness to keep that number from not coming to pass.
So, for example, we'll hit this a little bit here really quickly, but South Dakota, for example, 895,000 people is the population in South Dakota. Rank in population, it is the fourth least populated state in the U.S. is North Dakota, which population is 774,000, while South Dakota is the fifth least. So we are kind of running into that as issues of getting that submitted.
Yeah, and it's shocking just to even hear that someone would actually try to create a full ban all the way across the state.
Right. Exactly. And that, to me, that's more of the key point, is we're talking anything, even that is regulated at this time of the cannabis product, would now become illegal starting in 2024 in that state.
Well, the criminal actions in that state would increase exponentially. I'm talking about, it would explode. On top of that, you would change the way of life for hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Right. And remember, it's cold, it's brutal up there. And spending the time that I did in North Dakota, the towns where they did the oil fracking, now I know that that's different in South Dakota, but still huge opiate issues, to the point where you saw a lot of documentaries on news sources, on primetime, and all these places about the opiate epidemic up there because they didn't have the cannabis available for them. So the opiates exploded.
Yeah, I see that.
Now, remember, we talked a little bit about Minnesota last week, sorry. See, days, years, weeks, months, hours are all running together, aren't they? So we talked a little bit about Jesse. But from 1999 to 2003, former, as we talked about, professional wrestler and the governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, would like to get into the cannabis industry now. That's what he's looking at. He is the first major politician in America to have his own cannabis brand. Setting aside whether he meets the definition of major politician or not is questionable, as people want to say. Governor to me is pretty major, though. He may have some competition because within his own state, former Minnesota House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler is planning to launch a line of THC-infused beverages. What are your thoughts there?
Definitely support that. We we just need more research so that way that the regulations around it is in place, and then that product will shoot right off the shelves.
Well, interesting enough, that's going to set us up for a topic later. We have some big news in the THC beverage industry market, and a huge player in the adult beverage market is about to let's say ruffle some feathers. Let's put it that way before we get into that news. But that's going to be something interesting that we're going to talk about shortly. But now let's go to Maine. Maine will allow, again, they will allow legal marijuana businesses to take some tax deductions on their state returns to make up for the forbidden expenses of the federal tax. The new tax freedom as a result of the bill, legislative document 1063, recently signed into law, makes the income tax deduction for the business expenses currently available to registered caregivers, dispensaries, and also available to cannabis establishments and testing facilities. They are now the 17th state to offer some form of relief on the state level for companies under the federal tax code. Section 280 of the tax code prohibits marijuana operators from deducting traditional business expenses on their federal tax returns. So under Maine's new law, which was first reported by the Marijuana Moment not long ago, cannabis tax money will be shifted into the state's general fund to make, how about this, up to a projected $2.5 million in reduced state revenue. Efforts in Congress to reschedule at the federal level to provide permanent relief are unlikely to be successful until more reforms can become law.
Wow. Wow. That is a jaw dropping. Wow.
As I say,
What are
try to
your
wrap out of that for a minute.
Yeah, that one yeah, that one put me in a reclusive position. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I like the idea that basically they are saying that, hey, we're going to allow you to have some form of tax deductions. We're going to allow it to actually be used on your tax returns. But again, I know it's the idea of beating a dead horse, so to say. How valuable are the tax reductions and the possibility of doing that when you still have no form of safety in your banking to help out your company if there is an issue? Yes, the deductions is a nice plus. They are the 17th state to do some form. But the question is, we don't know all the ins and outs. Maybe you can do a tax deduction, but only up to $1,500. Maybe you can do a tax deduction if you meet ABC criteria, but we don't know what all of it is without delving into this document 1063 or section 28 of the tax code. So on the outside looking in, it might sound great, but what are the actual guidelines and regulations? We don't know that yet.
It sounds like a tremendous amount of restrictions, Nate. That's
Right.
why I'm like, I got to sit back and just look at it. When you're not allowed to, um, just overall, it puts you in a position where they're gonna make you take a loss. So by not allowing you additional withholdings, it you now have to pay more taxes on things that you use to operate and get into business.
It's going a little bit here. So what it says is that, wow, that's going to be a good bit. No deduction or credit shall be allowed for any amount paid or incurred during the taxable year in carrying on any trade or business if such a trade or business or the activities which comprise the trade or business consists of trafficking in controlled substances, which is prohibited by federal law or law of any state in which such trade or business is conducted. So, just going off that basic right there, it sounds like it's more smoke and mirrors.
Yep. You put it. That's a good way to put it.
Because it says right there, prohibits operators from deducting traditional business expense on their federal tax returns. So if a traditional business expense, for example, let's take a restaurant, traditional business expense would be buying product, would be transport of the product, or would be insurance on the product or resources inside that building. If all of those are traditional business expense, what are they going to be allowed to deduct? Because it says right there you can't deduct anything that's considered, though a state approved, federally illegal, which that's still federally legal. So what can they deduct?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
So that's something we'll have to dive into as well and look even more on this document 1063, because I don't know what exactly that's supposed to be, because that really kind of makes a questionable of smoke and mirrors. You're showing me this, but you're not giving me anything that I'm allotted to do, at least at this moment from what I see.
Hey, like they say in court, I put in a motion to strike. Strike that. It needs to go.
So honestly, without delving into it more, it's been a good bit. It first was signed on July 26th of 2023, so not that long ago. But it started in March when they first started talking about it. Now, I said I don't have all the breakdown yet. So it has been signed into law, but we need to figure out what more of this law actually includes, though, because it is definitely signed into law. I just don't know what everything underneath that is at this current time. So that's something we'll have to delve into and try to have more of an update for next week. But now, how about this locally? July 28th, so a couple weeks ago, the second of two licensed medical cannabis dispensary opened its doors right here in Georgia. Botanical Sciences began sales Wednesday in the town of Pooler, just outside of Savannah. The opening comes 3 months after the state's only licensed operator, which we know about, Trulieve in Georgia, in Marietta. And that one also opened, they had a second one, open for business in Macon. The company, as we know, is a subsidiary from Florida. It's a multi-state operator. Since has launched now in Pooler, Marietta, and Newnan. The company has plans to additional outlets in Columbus and Evans, Georgia. Now, Botanical Sciences is looking to establish another dispensary in Augusta, Chamblee. That's an area you're familiar with. And guess where else? Stockbridge.
Wow, Stockbridge? Okay.
Yeah. That's listed under, I don't have the time frame, but under Georgia rules, MMJ operators in the state are permitted to open up to 6 dispensaries each. So that's what they're looking at. They've got the one, like we said, in Pooler and in Columbus. So they're looking at Augusta, Chamblee, Marietta, and Stockbridge as well. The Georgia legislature approved those rules in January that will eventually allow the licensing of up to 6 companies to manufacture and sell low THC oil in the states. Flower, edibles, and vape cartridges are banned currently under the MMJ program. But before we go into this a little bit more, what are your first initial thoughts on what that news is?
I mean, I think overall, um, some of those cities are taking the steps for the decrim to put things in a perspective where it can rebalance out the equity and opportunity for everyone. The incarcerations for small possessions, it just needs to be totally banned and abolished, and give people a fair, equitable chance to be able to use, have, consume, possess, though they're just relegating it down to a ticket or fine. But for the most part, I definitely hope to see more expansion of the program, and that starts with more research.
No, absolutely. Now, we'll run down a couple of these. These who are allotted under this program: seizure disorders, appetite loss, pain, nausea, cancer, epilepsy, glaucoma, HIV, AIDS, PTSD, ALS, Crohn's, Parkinson, MS, chronic non-alignment pain, and other conditions. The other conditions you'll get, they're saying they do have to be debilitating, are those from which a physician believes that the medical use would likely outweigh the potential health risk for the patients. So that currently is what you are allotted to get underneath that MMJ program here in Georgia.
And we need to keep pushing for it. I think for the most part, with Georgia just only licensing the oils, it do need to expand it. It needs to expand that whole program altogether. There are too many people that has disabilities that this plant can improve upon.
Now, the question I have, though, is what are your thoughts on the doctors prescribing when they believe the medical would likely outweigh the potential health risk for the patient? The reason I'm asking that is we know there's still that idea, that stigma, that thought process. Do you think that it would be one of these things where some of these doctors would say it's too great of a risk, you have to use this FDA approved drug instead of?
Yeah, I get it. Um, it should be sped up, Nate. Without question, we need a key person in the state to push this forward.
I mean, it is nice that there's a gray area where the doctor has the right as a physician to say, hey, this is more important, so here you can use it for medical use. But it still sounds like that's also going to be the cop out for a lot of them to say, hey, I don't believe in using it.
Yeah. And once again, that goes back to the beliefs. That also goes back to the education standpoint. That also goes back to all of the myths that are actually out there. I think Shane discussed this in his segment when he came onto the show. The education proponent for this is so important that it is the first priority, not the last, first priority. So that way that we can reset the mindsets that are out there, that this is not the old, this is the new.
Now, for those who are curious, to get the DOT medical card, it is $60, and you visit Metro Atlanta Injury and Wellness Center for more information. But now here's part of that downside. It takes approximately 3 to 5 months to get said card.
A DOT card?
DOT medical card, which is $60, it's saying it takes 3 to 5 months to get it. And now also I want you to keep in mind that possession of 1 ounce or less is a misdemeanor, which is punishable by up to 1 year imprisonment and or a fine of up to $1,000. That's still what's currently on the books.
Okay. Okay.
So that's where that's sitting. Now, we're about to get to that big part that I really wanted to talk about for a little bit, but we're going to go to Wisconsin first. Now, a top Wisconsin Republican lawmaker says his party is aiming to file a long discussed but yet on-scene medical bill this fall. And we're now, 6 weeks away from the fall?
Yeah.
All right, so this comes as the Democrats draw attention to the fact that the state is now on an island of prohibition in the region, with one legislator visiting a dispensary and buying cannabis in a nearby Michigan over the weekend. Minnesota's marijuana legalization law went into effect this last week, as we talked about last Wednesday. Wisconsin Assembly Speaker said that the caucus is crafting a proposal that we hope to bring forward this fall. Giving a timeline for the legislation is the new interview with the Wisconsin State Journal after repeated pledges to introduce the medical cannabis legislation. Prior commitments have been met with skepticism from Democrats, including 2 pro-legalization Senate majority leaders who say she is yet to come to hear from any colleagues about substantial plans to advance the issue. Details about the proposal have not been released, but are expected that it would be extremely limited measure that may provide too restrictive to earn the support of Democrats or anyone, honestly, who want to see Wisconsin follow the lead of neighboring states like Illinois and Minnesota who have legalized for adult use. So the first thought there, they want to introduce it in fall, but we've got nothing set. Now, if we're going to do it in fall, don't we need to have time to get it out there, discuss it, have people banter back and forth about it before it gets put on the initiative of the ballot?
Well, let's do with the ballot. Let's deal with the ballot first, right? So, in order to get this to pass, you have to have regulations in place, right? So then that way, now you can get the public to now vote on it so that it can pass. So that's how we do the ballot and the vote first and foremost.
Right. Agreed.
So as soon as that is done, and we still find ourselves in an awkward standpoint where I think up to now we have just under 30 counties on a decrim in Georgia, and we have 159 counties. So right now we're not even halfway in that fight to get fairness in at least 50% of the state. So we definitely got to work on more counties adopting the decrim.
No, absolutely. Now, there is some good news, though, for up there in Wisconsin. In the meantime, Wisconsinites are taking advantage of those outside state markets. So, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois. Representative Christina Shelton, who toured a Michigan cannabis business, they said this past weekend, she posted on Twitter that she grabbed incredible merch and, yes, purchased some product. She goes on to say that here's the deal, folks. The most dangerous thing about cannabis is that it's illegal in Wisconsin.
Wow.
So to her, that's the biggest danger behind the cannabis market is that it's illegal.
Yeah, got to come off that Schedule 1 quick.
Mm-hmm. So Senate Majority Leader, who has been vocal advocate for marijuana reform, raised this issue recently with Biden's administrative office during a meeting at the White House. Shared that Shelton's post and said it's a matter of if Wisconsin would enact the legislation, but when. So not if, but when. But again, here are the thoughts. Hey, it's great that somebody's kind of mentioning it to Biden and pushing the issue, but we're not getting any feedback, any traction from the White House at all, are we?
Total traction. President Biden has been on the fence for too long, and it's time to change his standpoint. He has to do things that are better for this country. Just today or yesterday, he's put in more sanctions on China, especially with the false reporting in the stock market. So there's a lot of things that we can import from China, and we can do it right here in America, and we need to work on building that. So the White House themselves have to make the decision of being on the fence from the old mindset of we're prosecuting everyone for marijuana possession. He has to take marijuana off the Schedule 1 and allow the plant to be industrialized in this country so that way that there are a tremendous amount of opportunities will open up across the board. And that's it. And it's just right now we have too many discrepancies in the leadership for the country. We have one with indictments coming on a former president, and we have indecisiveness on a current president, along with potential indictments as well. So, I mean, we're in this fix that it's like I don't know. We need solid leadership to be able to make the sound decisions to move us forward.
Well, no, exactly, because basically what we're getting is each finger is pointing at each other, saying who can tattle to the teacher or the parent first and get the other one in trouble, but we're not making any progress moving forward on what we need to move forward as a collective group. It's staying too much with the individuals, it seems.
It is. It is. And that's how they exploit it. Because if you can exploit one individual, if you exploit a million individuals, you got you got tens of millions of dollars of fines that you're going to levy against those individuals.
Well, the thing is, by taking off the Schedule 1, let's think about it here for a moment. A restaurant, for example. How many times do you go into a restaurant and you see multiple chicken dishes, whether it be from wings to fingers to nuggets to using it in pasta or whatever? And the reason is because you can use that one product and divide it into so many sub-products, multiple items to sell. You can do the same thing with cannabis. You can use
Yeah.
the hemp for clothing, for medicine, for rope, for the flags that we've seen. There's almost no limit. Hempcrete, the prosthetics, there's almost no limit to what could be sold from this one product. Why not make it accessible and available?
They got to start looking at it, Nate. I just think that no one has the cojones to make that decision because of the possible pushback. That's just really what it comes down to.
Agreed. So here's a couple of interesting things I wanted to get from. Remember earlier, we were talking about THC beverage infused drinks, right? There's some news out of St. Louis. Well, let me ask you this before I go into that part. Aside from the St. Louis Cardinals in baseball, what else is St. Louis really, really known for?
Well, it was the Rams before they moved back to LA. Um, but yeah, the Cards have definitely been uh, the team and the sport of baseball has been everything to St. Louis.
All right, so I don't think they're tied in any longer than maybe, what family, who was it that owned the St. Louis Cardinals?
Ooh.
Huge, 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 major beverage company.
Uh,
Right.
it's right on my tongue. Hold on. It's right there in St. Louis.
Yes. And there's multiple
Uh,
plants here in Georgia, Cartersville, Rome.
oh God, I got brain freeze. What is it?
Anheuser-Busch.
Anheuser-Busch.
So guess what they've done now? They've reached an agreement to sell 8 of its beer and beverage brands, including Shock Top, Highball Energy, to global cannabis company Trial Ray Brands.
Wow.
That is a deal that is happening right now. The deal is expected to be completed by the year's end and includes current employees, breweries, beer pubs associated with these brands. The brands, as we said, are Shock Top, Breckenridge Brewery, Blue Point Brewery Company, 10 Barrel Brewing Company, Red Hook, which there's Red Hooks right here in Georgia, Widmer Brothers Brewing, Square Mill Cider, and Highball Energy. The move will elevate Trial Ray to the 5th largest craft beer business in the United States, up from 9th. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is if we are selling multiple beers now to a global cannabis company, what could happen now with the CBD beverage market?
They'll focus on the cannabis CBD drinks and what that actually will do. It should bypass FDA standards because it's not an alcohol. If it's a water-based drink, totally legal, totally legal. So what it does is it accelerates
Right.
that opportunity.
And that's the thing. Shock Top is a big, big seller. Now, of course, we know so many other things underneath Anheuser-Busch, from Budweiser, Bud Light, Busch Beer. Of course, those are going to be their higher ones. But that's a pretty major brand to be selling off. So this would be something I'd like to dig into more. What is the reason that they're selling the 8? Is it strictly a financial move? Are they looking at tying in financially with possibly Towerway Brands? Because, for example, here in Georgia, there is a deal where to distribute beer, you can't do it on your own outside the state. You have to have tie-ins with a distributor. So take Yingling, for example, oldest brewery in the States, right? They're their own company, but they distribute through Anheuser-Busch here in Georgia.
Right.
Could they be doing the same thing with this Talray Brands? Maybe they're selling these companies off, but now they are having an exclusive distribution package with them.
Right.
Don't know. It's an interesting thought to keep in mind because I'm not sure where it's going to play out and where it's going to go. So now I want you to think about this, and this is something you and I have actually discussed a couple of years ago. Something we wanted to do, but it's now happening. Liquid THC. Have you heard about that? So
I have heard about the liquid teas. Yeah, I have.
yeah, and it's about to actually hit off bigger because those who like a refreshing drink, hangover-free beverage, that is a big alternative to alcohol as well as traditional cannabis edibles. Hemp Beverage Company proudly introduces a mocktail created liquid THC. This initiative product gives the consumer the freedom to transform any drink at all into an enjoyable alcohol-free cannabis delight with an unbeatable balance of taste, efficiency, and consistency. Each bottle contains 80 milligrams of hemp-derived Delta-9 THC, providing 8 controlled 10 milligram servings to align with an individual's ideal dosage, and it's available for purchase through hempbevco.com and select retailers nationwide. The retail price is $19.98 per bottle. So I'll go into it more in a minute, but what are your initial thoughts there on that?
Can you hear me, Nate?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. That signal went down. So I lost you on part of that. Can you repeat that last part?
So basically what's going to happen with this is the consumer is going to be able to transform a drink. So whatever they like, a tea, a lemonade, a water, anything that's alcohol free. Now, unfortunately, let's speak truthfully here. If this is going to be its own product, such as the drops that we've seen, and I can't think of the companies now, but the drops that they put into water to give water flavor, right? Because each bottle is going to contain 80 milligrams of the hemp-derived Delta-9 THC. Inside of that, it's going to have 8 controlled 10 milligram servings to align with an individual's dosage. It's available for buy through retailers and the website at a price of $19.98 per bottle. But my thought is, if you're going to sell it as drops that people are going to put into a drink, theoretically now, couldn't that individual put it into any alcohol-based product that they want?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm about
That's
to
the
pull it
perfect
up and
add-on.
look at it. Right, I'm going to pull it up and look at it, but my thought is it's going to be just like I said, I cannot remember it. Was it miso or whatever, where you can drop that into your water to give it a separate flavor? Isn't this going to be the same thing?
Absolutely. As long as it's separately packaged, they own to something.
Because it's going to be the idea of, hey, they can do what they want, how they want it, so to speak. And I'm trying to see if I can find up, and I don't see much about it here, but we'll keep looking. Yeah, the website's not showing me anything, so that's going to be something I'll have to dive into more. But it's $19.98 a bottle. Now, the contrast to the market's overwhelming THC edible offerings, this mocktail realized the long lag time associated with traditional edibles as well as their bitter aftertaste. This accomplished using a groundbreaking technique called nano infusion. The method creates an onset similar to that of alcohol, but without requiring the additional of any chemicals, unnatural ingredients, and it guarantees the effect within 10 to 15 minutes. That remains in your system for roughly the same duration as an alcoholic drink. So, most drinks will last, of course, depending on your metabolism and how often you drink and other factors. A drink will last usually at least an hour in your system with a high time of 30 minutes, right? Of course, ABV all does that differently, but this could take effect in 10 to 15 and stay with you for about an hour. What are your thoughts there on that one?
Um, if it stays with you about an hour, I mean, you get a mild buzz out of it, and from there, it's all about what level of intoxication that you receive from it. Uh, what is the dosaging that they have for those?
Well, each bottle contains, as it says, 80 milligrams, but then it says it provides 8 meticulous controlled 10 milligram servings. So I'm assuming it's going to be similar to kind of like a NyQuil bottle. It's going to be a big thing, but then you're supposed to pour it off and create it lower. But if it's not an individual package type deal, what's to really stop somebody from putting 18 milligrams in, 20 milligrams, whatever they decide to?
That's what I was about to ask you about the dosing. It should be individually dosed, so that way it's almost like the consumption of one can of beer, two cans
Right.
of beer, three cans of beer. The dosaging should follow along those lines.
Well, that's exactly how I would think about it. But, that's something we're going to have to keep on a little bit more. Now, there is a company that we need to reach out to from what I'm seeing, because there is some of that already here. It'd be great to talk to them a little bit more about it and see exactly, how it works. Because what they're saying is, unlike traditional edibles that are pre-dosed, this product allows the consumer to add just the right amount. So they're going to choose what they want, when they want, and how much.
Okay.
That eliminates the age-old problem of taking too much. Does it though? If you're going to choose whatever you want, I get the idea of, hey, instead of each one having, say, 10 grams in it, you can choose and do less if you want. What's to stop them from doing more?
There's nothing to stop them from doing more, and the risk that comes along with that is uncharted, and that's why more research is required in that matter.
Right, because to support the consumer in pinpointing their ideal dosage, the Mocktail Creator Kit comes with a bottle designed for precise dosing. Guess what? A dosing cap, just like NyQuil, and a guide of how to determine your perfect dose. This educational tool will walk the consumers through the exact steps required to arrive at their individual ideal THC dosage for a pleasing and consistent experience every time. Now, again, whether it be this product or a medicine prescribed by a doctor, it does say, for example, take 2 pills every 6 hours. But let's also be honest, consumers don't always stay with those guidelines, do they?
No, they don't, and that's where the federal regulations come in at with that.
Exactly, because in line with the regulations set forth by the 2018 United States Farm Bill on Delta 9, THC is an extract exclusive from the hemp cannabis plants and meticulously meets the 0.3% Delta 9 THC dry weight volume limit. As a result, the product is federally legal in all states. But again, that's at the zero point 0.3 level. Is everybody going to stay in that?
No, and you also got to keep in mind what happens with that low number, as people consume and they build their tolerance up for it. Generally, they're going to increase their consumption.
Right. So
So
I'm actually looking at it right now on their website, which they say it's completely legal, but because of what we just talked about. So the product itself, okay, fact acting in as little as 15 minutes, no cannabis bitterness, mixes easily, your strength, your way. It includes dosing cup, a guide for determining your dose. All right. 80 milligram THC per bottle, 10 milligram individual servings. So, of course, it's got the bottle itself and then the cap. So you'd pour and then drop it in. And it says it contains less than 0.3% on the Farm Bill. Let's see. Water soluble. Water and cannabis don't always mix well, causing uneven distribution and sticking to the sides of the bottle. Not with this. Our unique formulation is water soluble, making it effortless mix into the drink you desire. Say goodbye to clumps or unevenness. All right. And it talks about broad audience. We believe in freedom of choice with our mocktail creator. The flavor is entirely up to you, whether you crave a refreshing fruit juice, a rich, syrupy concoction, a classic soda. You get to call the shots, experiencing the perfect taste that aligns with your unique preference. So that, for example, and I go on to give you recipes of a whiskey sour mix, a tonic mix. Now, of course, that's supposed to be all non-alcohol, but how many people are going to mix it with alcohol, and what issues could that now derive to?
well, the ride itself, if you go by the dosing that's specified, um, you're about as safe as possible. That's law. They're following what the law has indicated is the limit. I think everything over the course is in foul territory, and you have to consume accordingly. That's why I've always been an advocate for the consumption lounges, so that way you're in a safe space and you have someone that can attend and address issues as they come up.
So, like here, for example, the whiskey sour mocktail, which whiskey was always one that I enjoyed, so that's why I looked at it. So, for example, 3 ounces lemon lime soda, 1 ounce freshly squeezed lemon juice, 1 ounce freshly squeezed lime juice, half an ounce of simple syrup, a cup of ice, and 1 ounce egg whites. That's what they're saying that you make to create that whiskey taste, and then add this syrup. Well, guess what? If I want your mocktail, why do I need to go all that work? Why don't I just use whiskey itself?
That is a bypass.
Now, of course, we know very well that that is considered illegal right now, and that's why they're giving it, because then, for example, you go to the pina colada. That one's not too bad. 4 ounce canned pineapple juice, 2 ounce coconut cream, a half a tablespoon of vanilla extract, and a cup of ice. Pretty simple to make, but again,
Mm-hmm.
the consumer buys this product and now they have it at home. Or guess what? Let's be honest. What happens if they bring it into a bar and now they put it into that drink that the bar has provided legally, properly, safely, within reason, but now the consumer themselves is doing that? That opens up a whole new realm for bars, lounges, and other club establishments, does it not?
No, it does. The liability shoots through the roof.
So now the burden of proof to you that you show that they brought this in, and I know it burden of proof should be on the consumer, not the individual bar. But if they subdose into a different container, now they've thrown away that container. Where's the proof that it came from them and not from you?
That's true. And what happens is the burden of proof is going to fall back on the bar because they have the license.
Correct.
So they're in a tougher pickle than anybody else.
So definitely something for, thoughts, for mindset, and to bounce back around. We are at that 12 o'clock time frame, but these will be things we got to keep looking into, and we need to figure out more about that Minnesota bill and the Wisconsin one on the tax relief, because I think it's going to be not as cut and dry and as simple as people make it out to be.
No, absolutely. Minnesota is where it starts at. That state is definitely making gains to make sure it's legal across the board, and we definitely want to continue to support and talk about that news coming out of that state.
Absolutely. So now that we're up at that 12 o'clock hour, your closing thoughts and where people can connect and reach out to you.
Closing thoughts. Hey, everybody, stay safe. Know the law is really important because we haven't gotten there yet.
No.
So, with that being said, follow me, Big Boy Sam, with two M's. Follow me on LinkedIn at Sammy Mumphrey.
And next week, we'll look at having some updates to the Minnesota as well as the Wisconsin. Anything else that breaks between now and then. Guys, stay safe. We'll see you next week. And as always, reach out to me at either DJNQ75 on both Twitter and Instagram. And guys, we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, everybody. Stay safe.